pass from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty. Boom, far down you go, Quackett Smith. Me, oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy.
Sit back, relax, put your belt on, and enjoy the show.
I think it's time for the main course. So let's delve into this Australia-French third test. I mean, the first 5 minutes was a big roller coaster for any Aussie fan. I think it was, 2 minutes in when Dungunu got injured, putting some pressure on that right wing. I think it was off the kick. And then moments later, we saw Koroibete have a just absolute brilliant tackle that dislodged the ball from Gelange's hands. And then 5 to 10 minutes later, Gelange dropped to the ground with a sore knee, grabbing his left elbow, complaining that his left eye hurt. Like, he had no clue what was going on, didn't know what to grab.
He passed, mate. That's why he didn't know what was going on.
It's like he fell apart, mate. Just he didn't know what was wrong with him. Yeah, which part of his body had internally combusted or collapsed. I think you're right. About the 5 to 10 minute delay there, it was like we were on some dial-up internet, that reaction time. But so he's got some work to do on that one. I mean, yeah, we were trying not to make the whole pot about this, but
yeah, come on, push on.
Yeah, we'll push on, but we're going to delve into it a bit more later. But look, Ben O'Keefe, Harry, you were, I think, was this you that was reading some of the commentary on social media?
No, it was me actually. I was reading some commentary just talking about. Some people were saying that after that absolute Barry Crocker of a decision for the red card, that O'Keefe had been pretty fair or siding with the Aussie team the rest of the match. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. But I'm actually curious to know if I could have just been blinded with the absolute rage that I was feeling for the entire rest of that game. I think there was a point only a little bit later in the game. It wasn't that red card where, Hooper was sincerely disagreeing with the ref and saying, mate, 37,000 people in here also disagree with you.
That was the Geelong head high. And let's be honest, that was a bit tongue. There was nothing in that. I think part of it is definitely our yellow-coloured glasses because of the fact that we were so angry. Like, I genuinely don't think I could focus properly on the game until after half time because I was just numb. Like, I thought we'd win the entire.
I'll tell you what we need. We need like a blood pressure reader or something. You need to tape ourselves up one of these games because I swear I was the closest to a heart attack I've ever going to be.
Yeah, I had stopped watching the game. It was still on in front of me, and I was just looking for French people to abuse on Twitter. Like, I was on a rampage.
Kiwis were generally against us as well.
Yeah. And I told every Kiwi mate I knew that I hate all Kiwis.
I think
don't alienate everyone.
I changed my mind. Later, but at the time, that's what I was thinking.
Look, Harry, I was going to say you touched on that Tate McDermott. The French Couillot scoring that try shortly afterwards, where the forearm to the face of Tate McDermott. Look. Honestly, I was completely okay with that. It's the absolute bitter taste in my mouth still from Samu Kerevi being yellow carded for that in the 2019 Rugby World Cup against Wales. The most ridiculous thing ever that caused us to not be top of the pool and lose that game. It's just like, I think Harry probably said it in one of his tweets. It's just the inconsistency. You know what I mean? Like I think ultimately, that was fine. I have no problems with Couillot's try over Tate. Just a good hard carry. Very hard to stop.
Yeah, look,
it was really hard to take, I think.
I think if that was in any other game and there wasn't a red card prior to it, no one would even mention it, to be fair.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a big deal. It just felt we were very hard done by when that happened moments later. I wasn't really raging at that point, to be fair. One of the other things that, I did rage a little bit on about, I think we all did, was that try that was disallowed when they took it back.
Again, guys, we're going to get to this, so let's not delve into this right now. You're right. There's some refereeing decisions that we're going to sit there and pick apart in a little bit.
Why do we have to go point by point, Harry? Why can't we discuss that shocking call as well while we're talking about it?
Yeah, okay. It'll just screw our footage, but no problem. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can scroll through.
This is us getting.
Let's do it now, then, eh?
Oh, there's a lot of slides there, Chase.
So hold on. Let's go. Let's go and talk about now. So here we go. This is the game that you were talking about. the BPA disallowed try. So the call was, and we've got it up on screen as well, that BPA was not allowed to score his try because of the fact that there was a knock on to Hunter Paisami early in the set play. Now, there was an actual question from Hooper, the captain, to the referee when they went and put it to TMO because Shalonch complained. And let's be honest, Shalonch has lost all credibility on any kind of sports. Sadly, I went from loving the bloke to think he's a bit of a dirtbag, to be honest, because but let's go on to the disallowed try. So I've put the law up here from the World Rugby TMO rulings on how they're meant to make these calls back from 2019, and I believe these are still current. You can see the point I've highlighted there. The potential infringement must have occurred between the last reset of play or restart of play and the touchdown, but not further back in play than 2 previous rucks and or mauls. So 2 previous rucks and or mauls is all they can go back. Now, Hooper said it was more than 2, and the referee said, Ben O'Keefe said, that the TMO looked at the footage and it was not more than 2. Well, I've done some homework. Here you go, boys. Let's count them up here. So the ball for Paisami, here's the knock-on. He takes it into contact. The French team all call it. There's one phase as we hit it up.
The counter as well.
Then we come up to a second phase that Petey Samu about to jump in. So from now on, they could have a look at it if he scores it right here, but he doesn't. As you can see, it falls immediately.
That's 2.
And then the last phase, BPA, on the third phase, picks it up and scores. So there's 3 phases. So the TMO is wrong. He has no right to look at that play. Jalonch is wrong, although I don't go against him here for actually asking the question. And then when Hooper was asked, Ben O'Keefe lies and says that it was okay and they counted it because they didn't, because it's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's really bad that you can have an error that's so obvious that every punter knows. And somehow the 4 guys that are apparently, the people defending it say, well, 4 TMOs, 4 referees looked at it and it's okay. It's bull.
I think the problem I have is that I don't actually think they did count it. I think that the TMO only looked at the knock-on. I think they went back, reviewed the footage. They're like, yep, it's a knock-on. And then Hooper came in and said, yeah, but how many phases was it? And Ben O'Keefe was already like, no, it's all good. They've looked at everything, whatever. And it was just like, no, mate, have they looked at how many phases it was?
I think Ben O'Keefe there, really all he needs to do is say, can we check how many phases it was? Because he listens to one captain, he doesn't listen to the advice from the other captain. I think all he had to do was look at it. The thing that makes this bad is the lie. Like to say, yeah, you back your TMO's decisions, fine. But to then blatantly lie to a captain who's asked you a question, that is a serious offence in my eyes. I think it's ridiculous. He can make a mistake. People will make mistakes, or the other guy can make a mistake. But to ignore him, I think that's wrong.
Look at the to move backwards now, since we've already delved into it a little bit, the red card. So I've got the way that the law needs to be interpreted here on screen. You can obviously see the Koroibete red card being handed out 4 minutes and 27 seconds into a game. So, gigantic decision for the context of this series and for the context of 1 million people trying to watch the game at home. So point 1, has head contact occurred? If no, play on. Now, I think that this is something that we can debate, but we'll have a look at the footage. If yes, was there any foul play? If no, play on. If you're saying there was head contact, then I'd have to say that it's foul play. So we move on. The player at fault, I think largely Koroibete, if it was in the head, would be at fault. Was the degree of danger low, medium, or high? Well, without a doubt, he flew in at high pace. So it can't be low danger. So it has to be medium or high. I think that's fair.
Yep.
Probably high with the pace that he came in and how hard the hit was. And was there any mitigation? Now, mitigation will not apply for intentional or highly reckless acts of foul play. This wasn't intentional. This wasn't highly reckless. And there was definitely mitigation when the player dropped his height. Now, O'Keefe said, he said that there was no mitigation, but it should go from a red to a yellow card if you think he made contact with the head. And I should say that from some of the correct points on Twitter, that their head also counts as anything above shoulder. So that counts the throat as well, which was the argument of a lot of people. If we flick forward, then we have the World Rugby Law Application Guide. So this is how it should be in actually applied, which is what we were just talking about. So the considerations for mitigation is what's the player's line of sight? Is there a sudden and significant drop or movement? Is there a clear attempt to change the height? And is the level of control good or not? And finally, is it an upright tackle? Is it passive or dynamic? So he's not upright. He's bent at the hips. We're going to have a look at that. The level of control, I think he is in control. So I don't think I don't think we can defend him too much there as well in terms of making it's not like he was knocked into the tackle. There's a clear attempt to change height and that he lowers it. And I think we're going to have a look at the footage here and see about the change of height of Jalanche. So here we go. Let's slide through. Now, here's the play in real time. Sorry. Huge hit. And let's come through.
That kind of been real time because he took about 3 minutes to react.
There's the face there. Yeah, there's the delay. So, I mean, I think we've already made our thoughts pretty well known about what we think of Jalanche, but this is the $1 million picture for me. This one's great because when we're looking behind Jalanche, you can't see anything, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think we can defend ourselves there. Let's go over to the close-up view looking at Koroibete's right shoulder. Now, there was arguments for some people that it was a shoulder charge, and people keep saying he led with the shoulder. So for the record, every single tackle needs to lead with the shoulder for it to be an effective tackle. You don't tackle someone with your arms. So there's a real issue that people are trying to say that makes it a shoulder charge. He's clearly wrapping his right arm as he makes...
the elbow. Watch the elbow of Jalanche actually deflect and block Koroibete's arm continuing to move forward.
So we can see here on this image that Koroibete's right shoulder is behind the chin of Jalanche on the frame, and you can see the shadow of Jalanche's chin on Koroibete's shoulder. So that means that there has to be space between his right shoulder and Jalanche's head. So therefore, the contact cannot be made direct to the head. Arguably, it's made on the chest or throat, and it's not clear in any way, shape, or form.
The image kind of shows, like slotting together a jigsaw puzzle, you actually couldn't have hit him more perfectly.
I agree. I completely agree. Now, Dave Rennie said that he was on the actual board that actually came out and said how these things should be interpreted. And he said one of the key pieces of information was what happens to the player's head after he's hit. If the player's head goes forward, it's because it didn't hit the head and it's hit the chest, and therefore the player's head gets left behind the tackle. If it goes backwards, it's because the contact was constant, was immediate and on the head. So you can see the first movement there is the head comes forward onto Koroibete's shoulder, which means the tackle is not made on the throat or head. And then after that, the entire body goes back. But can you see how the head is still whipping forwards?
For sure, yeah.
There's no possible way that tackle can be on the actual head. As we come out, you'll actually see where Koroibete's shoulder is in relation to Jalanche, because he might have slid down a little bit, but it's still well in the middle of his pec. So there's no way you can definitely say that was ever on the head or neck. And actually, the biomechanics say that there's no way it can be. As we come forward, we get to see how much he dominated Jalanche, and then how much of a coward Jalanche is, and how much respect we'll lose for him from here. And hold on, there's the hit. Seconds have passed.
We've taken 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, 5 steps.
Now, last thing I want to say is the mitigation body height, right? So was there a loss in body height? Because we were told there was not. Now, this isn't the absolute best view for it, but we'll use it on one clip. There's Jalanche standing completely tall, 2 or 3 steps away from Koroibete. And then as he comes into contact, he is now crouched at the knee and crouched at the hip. Now, I could actually bring up the angles of his knee and hip to prove the point, but I think the footage that we've showed is already enough that he last minute dropped his height. So there is mitigation, even if it should be yellow. And secondly, you can see from the footage, it's clear he didn't actually hit directly on the head. Now, this is incredibly frustrating, and it's why I think it almost ruined the game. Thank God the Wallabies played one of their best games in a long period of time to save the match. But, you know, I've had a few people, as we put the kind of polls out to hear people's opinions over the last 24 hours, say the Wallabies won. Why do you care? I can tell you exactly why. I have the perfect answer. Because it's not just about this game. I am sick of these red cards ruining important test matches. It's ridiculous the impact that it has on the game, especially when things can be this unclear. It's something that seriously needs to be looked at. I can't understand why the Northern Hemisphere teams denied the 20-minute red card. At least they could have stomached some of it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Minute of a game. They could have ruined the entire spectacle.
It's pretty simple and it's pretty clear when you break that down and you look at it. And we don't have all the angles. We don't have the ability to look at everything like a TMO does. But we also know that Koroibete is 13 centimetres shorter. He is bent at the hip and he is bent at the knees. There is no way that was on him for height when he clearly drops his height significantly in those last few steps as well. But I agree entirely. The issue out of this is that, yes, there's been a crackdown on head injuries and head injury assessments. The player was not going to come off for a head injury assessment until Hooper had to point it out and say he has to go off for a head injury assessment. He dropped to the ground holding his face. Another issue is he held the front of his face, which never touched. No matter what our interpretation is, the front of his face never touched Hooper. So for me, I think one thing that needs to be considered here is that clear acting and milking against the spirit of the game? Is that something where a penalty
100%.
Is that where a penalty could be overturned, other things could be thought about or brought in, or could that be reprimanded after the match and say this in itself is not against the spirit of the game? Could he get a fine? Could he get a match ban? Or I don't know what it can be, but we are looking at the moment at descending into, I think, something that is going to be very hard to change in rugby in the world. I'm fine with protecting the head. There's nothing wrong with protecting the head. But when there's a significant drop and there's those mitigating factors, they cannot be ignored.
Yeah.
Can I say? I was
just going to say, do you want to have the last point on this? And you can read out my favourite slide of our entire presentation today.
Yeah. No, my final thoughts on it, and I'll try not to drag it on, but it's just that for mine, mitigating factors is, I think, a confusing issue for a lot of people, because lowering your body height, there's no one in that situation who isn't going to lower their body height for oncoming contact, right? That's like
a significant loss of lowering of height at the last couple of seconds.
Well, see, my interpretation of mitigating factors is, has the player kind of like slipped over or like fallen into a tackle? That is when, for mine, someone's coming in for a tackle, their head's almost down, and then they shoulder someone in the face because that guy has kind of slipped at the last second or whatever. That's when, in my opinion, you say there's mitigating circumstances. This person has committed to the tackle, and the player that he tackled has fallen or slid out of the way, had a sudden drop, which was unavoidable, and that's when that's happened. That's how I interpret mitigating factors.
That's fair enough, Cargie. But the way that the player dropped still was, if it's a significant drop, it doesn't matter what caused him to drop. If he slipped over or he dropped his body height significantly, that shouldn't change what the tackler's body position was. He still significantly dropped.
Yeah, I guess for mine, in this scenario, this tackle, I actually don't think there were any mitigating factors, but I don't think that should have even been a question, because I don't think the contact was anywhere in the red zone, as we've discussed. But
the other issue is, look, it just wasn't clear enough. And when you really slow it down like we have here, which surely is what the TMO should be able to do but didn't, then it becomes more obvious. But if it's not that clear, how can you possibly send someone off for 76 minutes of a test match?
Absolutely. Yep. Look, my last point on this is, the World Rugby often has, the flavour of the year that they're cracking down on. Only a year or two ago, we had, if you touched any player anywhere in the air, it was a yellow or red card. We seem to have relaxed on that a little bit compared to a year or two ago. And this year, it is head contact. And of course, it is something that we want to see out of the game and whatnot. But I agree. It's ruining test matches. And particularly, the fact that it was mainly England and France that went against the 20-minute red card, replaced the player ruling, just makes no sense. But look, I think we've talked enough about this. Harry, you said I could read out the line.
Best part of the show.
Just had the news about, just before we started the pod, of Marika Koroibete. His red card was not upheld by the disciplinary committee. It was thrown out. They said there was absolutely nothing to it.
Now, come on. Indication.
I'll make more sense if you
the quotes that have been sent through from Ball Collie are the best. The player Marika Koroibete admitted to technically committing an act of foul play worthy of a red card. That is to say, he thought he must have hit him in the head and admitted fault. Then, having reviewed all the evidence, the committee deemed that Marika Koroibete's tackle on French loose forward Anthony Gelonche initially made shoulder-to-shoulder contact. In other words, they disagreed with the Aussie trying to dob himself in. Subsequently, through the impact, any contact to the chest and neck was incidental by Koroibete. Therefore, World Rugby's head contact process was not met due to mitigating factors, and the act of the foul play was secondary. There was no red card threshold. All the players that are saying it doesn't matter, we almost
Boys.
Amazing.
It's vindication finally. Look, I think we're going to descend if we don't move on. That was our second winger. You know, within the first 5 minutes that we lost in this match, we were all very excited to see Dungunu. We're very lucky that we had Hodge on the bench. I don't think Hodge looked like he was at full pace. There was a little kick put through, and he really looked like he couldn't stride out. But we've got to be thankful we had him on the bench. He was very, very solid. He made good reads. I think he was a solid player on the bench for us. I think he did his part wonderfully when he came on.
He was the right player that we needed to come on. You know what I mean? We've all often talked about Hodgie as our Mr. Fix-It, but just his defensive reads and his cool head, I think that really helped.
Yeah, look, let's talk about the two best players on the park, one from each side. So, first of all, Melvin Jaminet, who was apparently a Pro D2 player before this series. I think he's had an exceptional series.
Yeah.
Defended amazingly well, which I'm sure Nelson's going to get to those stats in a little while. He's kicked amazingly well. His counter-attack is phenomenal. The bloke is 77 kilos, 180 centimetres. I just can't believe that can be true because he
can't be 77. No.
Mate, I'm just reading what Ultimate Rugby tells me, and they are Ultimate Rugby. So,
who stitched him up?
Yeah, well, look, for this game, he had 15 points. He had 86% tackle percentage. I think he missed one tackle. He had a couple of defenders beaten. He had an offload, a clean break, 93 run meters, clearly the most by anyone in the French team. And for those points, he had 3 penalty goals and 3 conversions, as well as I think his own try as well. Is that right? No try. But, man, he was exceptional again, and he's just grown every single game. And I think we should really commend a lot of the French players, but Jaminet had a great game.
He's certainly announced himself on the world stage, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he really went from strength to strength throughout this whole tour, really. I think there was a lot of talk about him and him being a player that was going to be a running style player, but not a kicking fullback. And I think he proved that wrong as well. I think he was quite composed when he was kicking for field position. He was brilliant at kicking off the tee. I think he's a very exciting player coming through for France.
Yeah, he made 15 of 16 kicks in the series, 94%, 93%, like almost 94%. Unbelievable.
Yeah, do we go, Harry?
The hero of the day for Australia, Noel Alessio, who, I mean, I think we're all saying we thought he was young and maybe didn't deserve to start all 3 games, but I think he definitely grew through every single one. And, man, he had an exceptional performance here. So stats for him, 21 years old he is only. He had an offload, a clean break, 35 run meters. Most importantly, had 23 points, which was made up of a try, 4 penalty goals and 3 conversions. He missed only 1 penalty kick in the entire match. He also had 3 of his 4 tackles as well, but they were just clutch plays as well. Everything that he did to leave his mark on this game was when it really counted. That intercept try when they were down a man early to try and get them back into the game came from nowhere, and how he slid through to make such a big run through so many defenders, I have no idea.
Mate, the cojones on the guy, the balls to go for that play. You're already a man down in the numbers game, and he just went for the all or nothing, and it paid off. And we needed it so badly. Absolute pivotal turning point of that game.
I think the interesting thing out of it is not only was he waiting to pick it off, the angle that he hit straight away, like he didn't just try to catch the ball. He went, I'm catching this ball and I'm backing myself to score here. And I thought that it was awesome to see.
Yeah.
You've got Noah's kicking as well.
That's right. Yeah, so he's kicked 4 or 5 and 3 from his 3 conversions. So for the series, that means he's kicked 5 out of 5 for game 1, 6 out of 6 for game 2, and 7 out of 8 for game 3. So that's 94.7%, 18 of 19 kicks. And I mean, he kicked exceptionally well at Super Rugby level. It's phenomenal to see him put that onto the test big match, into the big match as a test footy as well. And just phenomenal, the nerves that he had to kick. That last penalty, it was straight in front, but I think it was about 40 metres out. It wasn't a gimme. He looked so assured. He looked so confident.
Absolutely. And Nell said earlier that Hodge put his hand up for it, and you love to see young Noah Lesio saying, "No, boys, I've got this. I'm on fire. Give it to me." And it's just awesome. Yeah, like you said, 95% out of a kicker. It's rarely do we celebrate when our kickers are on song, and sometimes we see it as their job. We only talk about it when we've got our kickers missing all the time. But no, that's frankly incredible and absolutely awesome. Just what we need.
Look, I think one thing that I really enjoyed seeing him over this series is he plays with a smile on his face. He shares his emotions when they lost. He backs himself, and he's a very emotional, emotive player on the field. You can tell that he's loving it. I think one of the big things here, I think Harry's going to have or take us through a highlight and flick it on in a second, but this French try, this was, I think, the second French try. The first one was Coolio going down that short side. This was a little bit later on in that match. Harry, do you want to run us through what happens here?
It's Coolio going down the short side again.
It is. It is again. And then, Cargie, mate, he's your favourite player. Come on.
Oh, mate. Teddy Thomas at full pace, chip and chase through, and then through the hands. Coolio involved again. We've got Hastoy and out to Barassi to finish it. A huge team try. They've gone 80-odd metres. Just remained composed. Good backup and support, but skills, execution. It had everything. It was fantastic, this try.
Just the support play. Like they knew that something was on then because they had 4 or 5 backs lined up across the field. This was a planned move that exposed a hole in the Wallabies' defence. It was absolutely phenomenal. Loved this play. And don't get me wrong, as a Wallabies fan, every single Wallabies try was the biggest moment to me. But objectively looking at the match, this was the try of the series. It was absolutely phenomenal.
It was phenomenal. It was hard not to enjoy that, even though it was against us and we were a man down. It was absolutely brilliant to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what we'll do is we'll have a little bit of a chat about some of the stats in this one. So the Wallabies, yet again, I think we've had this ability throughout this series to just dominate the possession and the territory throughout the match. I heard someone on Twitter saying the issue with dominating territory and possession, or dominating possession, means generally you don't do anything with it. And you don't score points. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we used our set piece very well, and we had an ability to hold the ball better in this game with our breakdown work, with the injection of Swinton and Nasarani onto the starting side. But look, we had 6.
I was just going to say, I think it's even more important when you're playing a man down for the whole game. Possession and territory is everything, but mainly possession. You know what I mean? Like, even if you do nothing with it, you want to hold on to the ball because that's just a longer period of time that you're not defending, running around the field defending against an extra man. So,
definitely
amazing job to step up with that.
Yeah, we had 64% of that possession, 67% of the territory, which is great to see. Interestingly, I mean, this makes it a little bit tough on the French, but we only had to make 67 tackles compared to their 137, over double the tackles, and both teams missed 11 tackles, so their percentage was definitely up. But the French line-out, it was a little bit of a weakness for them. They lost 3. I think that was their worst in the series when it comes to the line-out as well. If we look at...
That was Darcy Swain and Swinton. I think we talked about last week. Swinto coming in did a really good job just being mongrels in there.
Yeah, definitely. If we look at some of these attacking stats, the Australians made 278 compared to 309 run meters. So we held the ball so much more. We went into contact, less than twice as much, yet we still didn't make the same amount of meters. That's pretty funny to see.
I think a huge amount of those meters was that try, that highlight of the match, though. but
I think it really tells a story about how the Wallabies ended winning this game. I think, in a way, we're kind of lucky the way that the French approached the game. They played a low possession game in general. They didn't really have a lot of strike power out wide to throw the ball around. And obviously, the exception is Teddy Thomas and how he set that try up that we just watched. But it really did play into the Wallabies' favour that the French weren't throwing it around and exposing the numbers too often. I think against some of the other, I guess, more attack-minded teams, we probably wouldn't have had that same kind of favourable play out of how the game went. The French seemed comfortable just setting their line and letting their Wallabies run at them, when really they probably need to throw the kitchen sink at us and expose those numbers. So the Wallabies played exceptionally well, but maybe tactically the French didn't take advantage of us quite as much as they could.
Yeah, I think one thing where they didn't get to take advantage of us, they still had 7-4 line breaks, but what we did, we pushed up through our centres and shot in defensively and had quite a high line speed to prevent the ball getting to that width for the French side. I think that was a really important part of how we won this game. We didn't let them use that overlap, and at no point really did it feel like they had an overlap in this match.
That's it. We gave them a bit of a taste of their own medicine, right? Just locking down the midfield with that line speed. All right. It's been this one. I haven't even talked about Taniela Tupou yet. In the preview last week, talked about one of the narratives of this for mine was huge, was we're finally seeing Tupou and Demba Bamba coming off the bench together and having that, being those impact players for the last 30 in this one. It was awesome. They were both pretty immense for both of their teams. But you have to say that Tupou, he took it home in this one. He got the treats. Did the Mahi got the treats. He was unbelievable. But largely, if we look at their role in the set piece, Tupou was just an absolute force to be reckoned with. The Wallabies did dominate across all the set pieces, the lineouts and the scrums in this one. But the scrums, Tupou was just unbelievable. So before I stop talking about Tupou, just that try as well. Yes, it's really hard to stop him, a pick and drive, but normally someone's on your ass or whatever. He didn't even need anyone. He literally went through 3 people. There was 3 defenders, and he just went through all of them. It was, Harry, I don't know if you've got that footage, and I'm just jumping ahead to it, but
No, I don't.
I'm too excited about it.
That's my favourite slide.
Just how good was he, though, Tupou? Unbelievable.
Oh, he's a beast. He is an absolute weapon. And as you said, Demba Bamba, he came on and made an impact as well, to be fair to him as well. But I think it was a really good showing from the reserve front row, from the Aussies, and they really controlled that set piece, and I think it was really telling.
In fact, sorry, the only other point I'm going to make about that, the scrum was so good and so dominant that I think there was at least 2 scrums in the second half. It was probably only 2 scrums where the French had the feed in the Wallabies 22 in a fantastic attacking position. And the Wallaby scrum was so good that Hooper just left the scrum and went and defended in the backs. He went and defended at the fly half position. So we scrummed a man down because we were that certain that we had their number. I mean, how demoralizing is that for the French? You know what I mean? You're in the red zone, and the Wallabies go take a man down themselves.
It's impressive. I think most of the time you'd tend to see, if it was a forward missing, they love to bring a winger who has no idea, or an outside back, into that forward pack so that scrum had the weight. And we did the opposite. I mean, it's awesome.
I mean, it helped that we had three locks, and I don't know if did Swinto play the full 80? I think he came off. I can't remember who stayed up, but we had 3 pretty heavy big locks on as well. So
yeah, no, Swinton came off. Look, I think we've got to jump across to this finish. This was such a brilliant finish. The French, right near the back end of that game, 55 odd metres out on a big angle, they had a penalty awarded to them, and they deliberated. It felt like for 3 or 4 minutes whether they were going to take this kick or not. But it came down to, I don't know if the players on the field knew, but if it was a draw, it would have been a drawn series and Australia would have retained the cup. Look, I don't know if that came into their mind or not. A 55-metre kick on the angle, I think they went, no, this is not our option, and decided that they were going to have a crack here. Boys, how good was this finish? Cargie, do you want to talk about this finish?
Yep, I tuned out. Did you just talk about them opting not to take the kick and going for the...
Yeah, mate. Oh, look, it basically we'll move.
They were just saying we wanted you to wrap us up. Come on.
The wind out of my sails. I was reading Harry's barrage of messages. Yeah, look, I mean, Darcy Swain getting in there, stealing the ball in the final play, huge. Just look, I think it capped off the fantastic game and series that he had. And I'd like to go ahead. Look, I think Darcy Swain might not have had as good a series as everyone was talking about, but in terms of your first series as a Wallaby, unbelievable. Okay. I would like to apologise for comparing him to he who shall not be named on this podcast again, Captain Mudd, who is no longer at our shores, thank God.
I was going to bring that up, to be fair, that you guys tore him to shreds, I think, before, saying he didn't really deserve it. But look, he single-handedly in key moments single-handedly in key moments at the end of two games, the two games we won, he had that last impact. So 80th minute, so he got that pressure on that line out and disrupted that line out massively in game one. And then he had this where he actually came straight through the middle of that rolling maul, not something that's easy to do. He came through, he came inside one player, and that's all you need to do, and disrupted that ball.
I watched it. He wrapped around the outside, and then when he realised he somehow ended up in the middle, he looks up and he looks at the ref and goes, "Oh shit!"
No, I watched it. He was on the right hand side of one of the guys, and he'd recorrected his body position and came inside the man. I think it was absolutely fine. He was unsure. He did look at the ref, but he came through the middle.
I think we can both agree the ref's always right unless it's against the Wallabies.
Correct.
Yeah.
I will say what was telling for mine was just with Phillip on the bench. I think Darcy Swain was calling the lineouts, and he certainly was giving a lot of chat in amongst those forward huddles for such a junior member of the side. So I really liked that, to see him revving the boys up and taking on some responsibility. I thought that was huge. So definitely excited for things to come from him.
We've got a couple special mentions. One of the special mentions was Hooper, yet again having a brilliant match. He had 5 runs for 23 metres, 3 tackle busts, 1 offload, 1 line break, a try assist, and 6 from 6 tackles, plus a turnover. And I think at one point he almost scored a try using his bum to batter through the defensive line yet again. And he was very close to the line, very close to making it happen. I also wanted to give a bit of a shout out to Lukan Salakai-Lotto. In every single scrum, he kept checking if Jelonch was okay with his head knock. And at the end of the game, he rubbed his head and it looked like he said, "I hope you're okay, mate." Like, he was really, really worried for Jelonch's well-being there.
Yeah, no, he's an excellent man, isn't he?
Yeah, great to see.
That wraps us up for the main course. So let's push on to the review of the entire series.